All right. And again, just so that you guys do know this or remember this, as I mentioned to you guys last week, maybe you missed it, but I am planning on starting to record these just so that way I can put them up on the notes, so that way in case you're ever gone for stuff. So it does not record your face. Might hear your voice in there if you answer a question, but this is what it's recording, is the screen as well as what I'm writing. And it is recording my voice as we're going. So just so you guys are aware of it, okay? So anyway, what we're gonna look at now is we're gonna look at specifically targeting, let's see if I can find that shape. There it is. I'm gonna specifically target this shape, okay? And this is called the parallelogram. In the name of it, what word do you see that we've already dealt with? Parallel. Okay, so what makes a parallelogram parallel is the opposite sides are going to be parallel. So if you see these little markings in here, those little markings mean that those sides are parallel to each other. So in our problems, the opposite sides are parallel to each other. Okay, that's what makes a parallelogram a parallelogram. Is everybody okay with that? Is everybody okay with those markings? Okay. Now, the other thing about a parallelogram, some of the things that we have, and they're going to be called theorems. However, we're not going to prove them. Okay, that's my promise to you. We're not going to prove them. We're going to use them, but we're not going to prove them. And so, one of the theorems that's involved with our shape is if a quadrilateral, so a four-sided figure, is a parallelogram, then the opposite sides, are you guys okay with me abbreviating opposite to be OPP? Okay. Then opposite sides are congruent. Do you guys remember what I meant, or when I said what congruent was? Anybody recall what congruent means? Like the same. Perfect. They're like the same. Okay? So if that's the case, not only do I have them marked as parallel with those little arrows on it, but I can also do this, and I'll put it in red, that the opposite sides, this one and this one, are the same size. And the top and the bottom would be the same size. Okay? Is everybody okay with that? So what I mean by that is, let's say if I make a problem out of this, if I say that this side is 7, how big would the other side be? 7. And then this side was 15, how big would the bottom side be? 15. That's what that means. So if I know that it's a parallelogram, then the opposite sides are going to be congruent. That just means they're the same size. Does that make sense? Okay. And the other part to it is, if a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then opposite angles are congruent. And again, I'm abbreviating, so if you guys want me to re-say it, I can. But I'm abbreviating now. So not only are the opposite sides the same, but the opposite angles are also the same. So that means this angle right here would be the same as this angle right there. This bigger angle at the top would be congruent to this angle at the bottom. Okay? Opposite angles are the same. So what if I told you this was 150 degrees? How big would the other corner be?
150 degrees.
This would also be 150 degrees. And if I told you this was 30 degrees, how big would the other corner be?
30 degrees.
30 degrees. Good job. Okay. Is everybody okay with that? Now, an example I have for you guys on this, is that what I want, is, I've kind of already given you one, but I want to give you another one like that. Let's say this is X, this is 9, this is Y, and this is 15. This is kind of how the first part of the worksheet's going to look like. Your job is to figure out how big X and Y is. How big is X? 9. How'd you get that? Yeah, it's right across. It's right over here. Okay, good. And how big is the Y? 15. Why? Because it's across from it. Yeah, that's it. Does that make sense? Is everyone okay with that? So opposite sides are going to be, if they're a parallelogram, opposite sides will be the same. Okay? All right. Then, one of the other things that it doesn't really talk about, but it should have, is the fact that in a parallelogram, angles, yes, they are the same, but they're also, two of them will add up to be 180 degrees. What's that called when they're added to be 180 again? Supplementary, very good. So in a parallelogram, angles that are next to each other are going to add up to be 180, supplementary. So these two right here, these two would add up to be 180. These two would add up to be 180. These two would add up to be 180. And the bottom two should add up to be 180. Now I want you to take a look at my picture. And I want you to look at all the letters I used. The top left corner, what letter did I use? D. Top right corner, what letter did I use? C. If I put D plus C equals 180, do I know how big D is or how big C is? No, I don't. Let's look at just the left-hand side. The top left is D, the bottom left is B minus 10. Are those the same letter? One's a D and one's a B. How about the two bottom ones? Are those the same letter?
Yeah.
That's where I'm going to start. On a problem like this, and by the way, this one is on your worksheet. On a problem such as this, look for the two letters that are the same, and that's where we're going to start. So we are going to add these together and set them equal to 180 degrees. So B minus 10 plus B plus 10 equals 180. So how many B's would I have? 2B? Or not 2B? No? All right, tough crowd. What's negative 10 plus 10?
0.
Yep. Equals 180. How do I just get B by itself?
Divided by 2.
Perfect. And what's 180 divided by 2? 90. Awesome. Now, we did problems like this before, but the only thing is then people would get stuck at, that's my B and that's the answer. It's not though. I have to plug it in. That'll help us find the rest of them. So on this one right here, if I put 90 in there, what's 90 plus 10? 100. Good job. So this angle, which I'll put it in red, I think it'll show up, is 100 degrees, because you said 90 plus 10 is 100. What's 90 minus 10? 80. So this angle over here is 80 degrees. Now can you figure out how big C and D are? If this one's 80, how big is C? 80. Because remember, opposite ones are the same. And if this one's 100, how big is this one? 100. Good job. So on a problem such as that, you want to start in the corners that would be the same letter. And that one is on your worksheet too. Okay? Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
And that's honestly, when you're looking at the worksheet, some of those, that's about as hard as they're going to get on the angle ones. Okay? Yeah, hold on. After I get done with notes. Then, the other thing that you also have, and we've already talked about this, but just in case, I'm going to write it down. If a quad is a parallelogram, and this is what we just did, consecutive angles are supplementary. And what I mean by that is that if they're right now like the two on the side or two on the bottom or two on the top, those are consecutive. You didn't skip any when you went around the corner. So like if you look at the parallelogram that's on the screen right now, it's just a little sliver of it. You see how the bottom corner is 150 and the top corner is 30? Those would be consecutive because they're next to, they're not adjacent, but they're consecutive when you're going around it. That's what they mean by that. And the last thing, so if a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then diagonals bisect each other. There's that word again. What does it mean to bisect? Cut in half, right? So I'm going to slide that over, put another shape in there, and do one last thing with you guys. And then I'll turn you loose with your worksheet. Okay? Carlos, would you give me a number?
12.
Okay. Thanks. Jadalyn, would you give me another number?
15.
Awesome. Sid, would you give me a number? Less than both of those? 10? Jana, give me one more. Less than 10.
2.
Okay, so we'll start with that. If I give you this on a picture, and I say this is what I want you to find is QS. I want you to find the length of Q to S. So from Q to S, how far is it? So we're going right from here to there. How did you get 4, whoever said 4? If this side is 2 on the top, then this part on the bottom is also 2. And 2 plus 2 should be 4. Good job. How long is MR? $10. How'd you get that? If this side's 10 from here to here, then so should this side. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, one more. What about QP? How long is QP? 12. How'd you get that? Okay, so then that way if this one's here, then it should be the same here, correct? Is there opposites? Perfect. Are you guys okay with that? Comfortable with that? All right. If I give you a thing that goes like this, all the way across, and it says that this is 100 degrees, how big would the measure of angle RSP be? One thing that I do to help me out, so this might help you, I don't know. You guys decide if this helps you or not. But one of the things that I do when I'm asked a question like this, and I still do this to this day, even though I've done this for a long time. It says I start at the letter R, I go to S, and I go to P. I'm finding the purple angle up there. So I trace it, even if I might not draw it specifically, but I try to trace it on my paper so I know. How big is it? How big is the angle? Not the length, Kate. Huh?
Maybe like 180 since.
I'm just finding the purple. So from R to S to P. It should be 100. Why?
Because the other side.
Yeah, the other side's 100. Good job. If I gave you this angle here was 29. How big would this part be? Just this little chunk. This one's a little trickier. And I probably shouldn't put one. I should put double angles there, so that way we know it's a different angle. Here's how I attack this one. I told you at the beginning that consecutive, meaning like from here to here, around that horseshoe or that make that thing, should be how many degrees total? 180. This angle and this angle total should be 180 degrees. You have 100 of it already used up, right? Because where Q is, that's 100 degrees. You have, I don't know, so give me a letter. Huh? Give me a letter.
I was doing the math in my head and I mixed it up.
Oh, I just want a letter though. Someone give me a letter.
P.
Huh? P, okay. And then what's the other part of the angle that they give us? How many degrees? What other part do they give us? That would be in green. You had 100 from the top. You have a chunk that I don't know. And what is the other piece that they give you in degrees? 29. Thank you. And remember, those consecutive ones should add up to be 180. So we're gonna find a little chunk. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna combine these like terms. What's 100 plus 29? Uh-huh. And then what would I do to just get P? Perfect, Colby. What's 180 minus 129? 51? So that angle would be 51 degrees. That's probably one of the harder ones you're going to have, and isn't very many of those on there. Okay, just so that we know, but that's the last part. Does anybody have any other questions you want me to go through? I don't know that.